Cargo theft used to be simple: guys with guns hijacking trucks at rest stops, crews breaking into warehouses at night, thieves cutting off locks in the parking lots. It was risky and it was violent, and you actually had to show up. That's not how it's done anymore. The most successful cargo thieves today don't carry weapons. They carry laptops. They're not wrestling drivers out of truck cabs at gunpoint. They're sitting in apartments, maybe overseas, browsing shipping contracts online and bidding on jobs like freelancers. This is how $400,000 worth of lobster, yes, lobster, was stolen. So a couple days before Christmas of last year, December 12, 2025, a refrigerated truck pulls up to a cold storage warehouse in Taunton, Massachusetts, one of the biggest cold storage networks in the country. The driver's there to pick up a shipment of processed lobster meat. The final destination was Costco stores in Illinois and Minnesota. He's got paperwork, a commercial driver's license, and the truck has the right company name and logo on the side. Everything matches what the warehouse was expecting. The workers check the documentation. It all lines up. They load pallet after pallet after pallet of lobster meat into the refrigerated trailer. The driver signs off on the pickup, and the truck pulls out of the lot and merges onto the highway. And that was the last time anyone saw it. So how did this happen? How do you just drive off with 400 grand worth of seafood in broad daylight? Well, let me teach you a little bit about how freight moves in this country. When a company needs to ship something, like electronics, furniture, or even lobster meat, they usually don't own the trucks themselves. They hire a freight broker, and it's the broker's job to be the middleman. They find a trucking company, negotiate the rate, and coordinate the pickup and delivery. They're the matchmaker between the cargo and the carrier. And the way brokers find trucking companies is through something called a load board. Think of a load board like a job marketplace for shipping. Brokers post available loads saying, here's what the cargo is, here's where it needs to go, and here's what it pays. Trucking companies browse the listings and find jobs that fit their routes, and they bid on the work. When a broker picks a carrier, they swap some paperwork, confirm the details over email, and the truck shows up to get the freight. This process is efficient and it moves fast. The whole system runs on trust and documentation. And that's where we see the vulnerability. Because it all happens online. You're not meeting the drivers beforehand. You're not visiting them at the terminal. You're looking at their safety ratings on a government database. Maybe you're exchanging a few emails. But you're trusting that the company on the other end of that email is who they say they are. Most of the time they are, but sometimes they're not. The freight broker on the lobster job was a company called Rexing, and they're based out of Indiana. They got hired to move the lobster from Taunton to the Midwest. It was a routine job for them, something that they've done hundreds of times. They posted the lobster load on the board, and a trucking company responded. The company had good safety ratings, proper licensing, the insurance looked good, all the boxes checked out. So Rexing hired them. Except this trucking company didn't exist. Not really. What the bad guys did was find a real carrier, a legit trucking company with a clean record and a good reputation. And then they cloned everything about them. They stole their identity. They copied the company name, the transportation number, the insurance information. They even registered a website with a domain that looked almost identical to the real company's. The only difference was a tiny accent mark over one letter. It was impossible to catch unless you're examining it character by character. They put the company's name and logo on a truck, and then they made a fake commercial driver's license for whoever was behind the wheel. And then they went shopping for high-value bids. And when they found the lobster job, they bid on it and won. When they showed up to the warehouse with a truck, a driver, and a stack of paperwork that all looked exactly right, the warehouse had no reason to question it. This is how freight gets picked up every single day across the country. So the warehouse handed over the lobster and the truck drove away. A few hours into the trip, something went wrong. The GPS tracker on the truck went dark. The driver had disabled it manually. So when Rexing couldn't contact the driver and they couldn't see the truck, they knew something was off. They called the police in Taunton. And that's when they got the bad news that this wasn't the first time. Actually, 10 days earlier, a different shipment had vanished from the same warehouse. Ironically, it was crab meat that went missing. It was the same setup. A carrier that looked legit on paper showed up with the right credentials, loaded the freight, and then disappeared. So 2 hits on the same facility in less than 2 weeks. The lobster and crab wasn't the only thing that disappeared in New England that month. Around Thanksgiving up in Maine, someone stole about 14 cages full of oysters. 40,000 of them, about $20,000 worth. So these seafood bandits got 3 shipments within 3 weeks across 160 miles of New England coastline. It might be a coincidence, it might not. Seafood makes an attractive target for a reason. It's high value, it's high demand, and it's completely untraceable. There's no serial numbers on lobster tail. Once it leaves the warehouse, you can't prove where it came from. If someone shows up at a restaurant or a distributor offering premium product at half the price, most buyers aren't going to ask a lot of questions. They're just going to buy. That lobster meat probably hit restaurant tables in Boston or New York within a week of being stolen. This is what freight crime looks like now. There's no mask, there's no guns, no squealing tires speeding away trying to get away from the boys. It's just paperwork and patience. 20 years ago, shipping was built on relationships. Brokers knew their carriers, drivers knew the warehouse guys. There was friction in the system. There was phone calls, handshakes, repeat business. That friction slowed things down, but it also created security. You knew who you were dealing with because you dealt with them before. Now everything's digital. There's load boards, email threads, PDF attachments. You can book a truck to haul a load across the country without ever hearing a human voice on the other end. A scammer can sit in another state or another country, go online, build a fake identity, and start booking loads. No one's visiting their office. Business happens by email. This scam, this con, it has a name in the industry. It's called fictitious pickup. Interesting name. It went from being 1% of all cargo thefts in 2022 to 17% by 2023. It's the fastest growing category of freight crime in the country, and it's still climbing. Cargo theft costs somewhere between $15 and $35 billion a year in the United States. The industry is trying to catch up with prevention measures. There's carrier vetting services now, identity verification tools, better GPS systems that are harder to disable. Some companies are going back to the old school methods, calling the carrier directly, verifying phone numbers against official databases, and making the drivers check in at multiple points along the route. But every time they patch one hole, the scammers find another one. When you can steal a company's entire identity with a domain registration and some forged PDFs, the barrier to entry is so low, and the payoff is extremely high. And the odds of getting caught are getting slim. The broker who got on the lobster job is pushing for better enforcement, more resources for investigators, tighter regulations on who can register as a carrier. Whether any of that happens is another question. So here's where we are. Somewhere out there, 40,000 oysters, a truckload of crab, and $400,000 worth of lobster meat have made their way through restaurants and the seafood black market across the Northeast. It's eaten, it's gone. The people who pulled this off are probably already back online, browsing another load board, scanning for the next high-value shipment of scallops and shrimp, and hoping that the next broker who hires them won't look too closely at the email address that they're using. If you have friends or family in the shipping industry, share this episode with them and say, don't get got.